Hey guys, this is Joe from Analog Archive, back with another vinyl video. Today's video is going to be my vinyl finds from the last month. Got a pretty good stack, so when I get kind of started with that, been really lucky this month with some great stuff. So we'll get started. These aren't really in any particular order, except for the ones kind of towards the end. This is In and Out, Joe Henderson. This is an album that I think a lot of people have seen. It got a Blue Note 80th pressing maybe like 2 years ago. Was on the lookout for this one, not really necessarily looking for an original, but was kind of looking for just a solid pressing. This is a Black B from the 70s, has the Van Gelder stamp, and overall sounds really good. This isn't really my favorite Joe Henderson session, but is a solid one, so worth kind of picking up if you do see it. Especially those Black Bs from the 70s sound really great. Next one is Lewis Smith Quintet. This is called Prancin'. This is a record on Steeplechase from the 70s out of Denmark. Those that maybe aren't familiar with Steeplechase, they were a label that started in Denmark in the early 70s. That showcased a lot of the former big jazz names in the US that had kind of moved over to Europe to be able to kind of continue to record. Yeah, so just a really great session. Lewis Smith was one that had a few records on Blue Note in the late 50s, but really didn't have a whole lot of output, and this is a great one. This one was recorded in April 1979, but it still sounds great. I listened to this recently. Great fidelity to these Steeplechase records, and anytime that you see them, they usually can be found for cheap. This one was $7, so they're usually not very expensive, and a great way to hear some amazing players still, some great musicians. Last weekend I went to a wedding for my friend out in Albany, and I went to a local record store there. They'd had this on Discogs, and I was able to grab this. This is Andrew Hill Grassroots. This is a late 60s recording, 4303. I believe this was from 68. Great lineup: Lee Morgan trumpet, Booker Irving's on tenor sax, Andrew Hill on piano, Ron Carter bass, Freddie Waits is on the drums. Great kind of frontman lineup: Lee Morgan, Booker Irving. That really kind of caught my eye. This doesn't really have the same sound that a lot of other Andrew Hill recordings had. It's not a very avant-garde sound. This is more of just like a kind of a post-bop late 60s Blue Note sound. So really great one. Not terribly expensive either, and I haven't had a chance to listen to this, but have streamed it, so excited to kind of listen to that soon. This was one that I had seen Chris from Tree McGee on Instagram, and then he also has a YouTube channel, A Supreme Love. If you don't follow him, make sure that you go over to his page, Supreme Love, all one word. But he had shown this, and it was kind of intrigued me that it's another Curtis Amy session. It's called Mustang, and there's been a lot of hype around Curtis Amy recently with the Tone Poet that came out last month, Katanga, and been kind of trying to find this. Found this in the basement at the Bop Shop. Great sound, very clean for what it is, and just a great one. Not one that's terribly expensive either, so a great Curtis Amy session from the late 60s. This was one that I was kind of a bit of a blind buy. This is Charles Tolliver and Music Inc., The Ringer. I really enjoyed Charles Tolliver. Really liked his contribution on Jackie McLean's It's Time album on Blue Note. Been trying to find his stuff. He has a few albums on Strata East that are very difficult to find, but this one is on Arista from the 70s. got great fidelity to it as well. I believe it is, I think it is stereo, but just a very, very energetic, very loud sound to it, and to his playing, and it's a great record. So very real cheap one, not terribly expensive, worth also kind of checking out. Another bit of a blind buy. This is Night Song, Kenny Burrell on Verve. This is from 1968. I think it came out in 69. It's got a little bit of a larger format to it than what a lot of other Kenny Burrell sessions had. Though during this time, I think in the 60s or mid to late 60s, he's kind of started going more into a larger band. But it's got Ron Carter's on the bass. Trying to just pick out some names. J.J. Johnson and Irby Green are both on trombone. Jerome Richardson's on the flute. Freddie Waits plays the drums on a few tracks. Haven't had a chance to listen to this one, but it's a combination of kind of a smaller quartet format, and then it also has a big band feel. So excited to check that one out. Next one is Art Blakey. Les Liaisons Dangereuses. Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers with Barney Weiland. So this has kind of a similar story to Miles Davis. I think it's like Elevator to the Gallows. That's on Fontana. This is a similar one, but just with Art Blakey. The film Les Liaisons Dangereuses from, I believe, the early 60s, like 61, 62. And they asked Art Blakey to kind of assemble a group to perform the songs on it. So had a chance to listen to this one. Sounds pretty good. Fidelity isn't super great, but it's pretty good for what it was. And really like Barney Weiland. His stuff is hard to find, so was excited to pick this up when I saw it. Next one is Lucky Strikes, the Lucky Thompson Quartet. And have had a chance to listen to this one. Sounds really great. Been more into kind of soprano saxophone playing, and Lucky Thompson plays the soprano sax on a few of the tracks. So excited to kind of check this out. I've seen this one shown on Instagram by quite a few people, and have been just kind of looking out for it, and lucky enough was able to find this in the bins at the Bob shop, just kind of sitting there. It'd been sitting there, I think, for like over 2 years, so not really sure. I think people just didn't know about Lucky Thompson. I don't know a whole lot about him. He had a kind of his recordings have dated back to, I think, at least the 50s, but he's had a few albums here and there. Mostly, I think, as a sideman, but a great great leader performance here. The next few are ones that I actually just picked up recently in the last few days. First one is Lee Morgan live at the Lighthouse. This is it's like a 75 pressing. The original was, I think, from like 70, 71. There's a recent, or going to be a recent, pressing of this coming out next month. That huge box set, I think it's like $350. Was looking for this for a while. Saw this at the Bob shop a few years ago and just kind of passed on it, and have kind of regretted that for a while. But happy to finally have this, and excited to check this out in the coming days. Another Lee Morgan one from the 70s, just Lee Morgan, self-titled. This was the last album that he recorded before he was unfortunately killed. It's from, I believe, 72, early 72, or maybe it might be late 71, early. Yeah, I think it's like 71, but got an interesting feel to this one. It's a 2 LP one, and few of the tracks are pretty a little bit more straight ahead. I wouldn't say a hard bop, more like modal, but the last track is a bit out there, especially for Lee Morgan standards, but Was excited to see this. Has been on my want list for a while. And recent trip to Angry Mom in Ithaca. I was able to pick this one up along with some that are, I think, coming up soon. Shout out to Dom, Seeking a Thread on here on YouTube. He's got a great channel. He's one of the employees at Angry Mom. He hooked me up with this one, and then along with the Live at the Lighthouse one. Really appreciate it. Great shop if you're ever in Ithaca, so worth checking that out. So this is Lee Morgan, self-titled. This next one is one that I've seen. It had been sitting at the Bob shop on the wall for a while and just wasn't really my thing for a bit. And then I recently picked it up a few weeks ago and have absolutely loved it. This is Grant Green, Live at the Lighthouse. So it's the same lighthouse that Lee Morgan's session was on. This was recorded April 1972. It's got a pretty large, or not too large, but it's got a decent lineup to it. This is more of a jazz funk sound to it. But this is incredible. Grant Green is amazing on this. And just this is one of my probably my favorite records that I've picked up this year. Just a very funky, jazzy feel to it and sound, and just really happy to have that. Next one is Cannonball Takes Charge, Cannonball Adderley Quartet. This is one of the rare sessions on Riverside, at least around this time in the late 50s, that does not have his brother Nat Adderley on it on cornet. It's just a quartet. So it's Cannonball Adderley is an alto sax, and Wynton Kelly's on piano. They play on all the tracks, and the bass and the drums vary. A few of the tracks have Paul Chambers on bass, Jimmy Cobb on the drums, and then a few of the tracks has Percy Heath on the bass and his brother Albert Heath on the drums. Really great sound to this. Some of them are a little bit slower, but for the most part it's more upbeat, mid to kind of fast tempo tracks, and he sounds incredible on this. We're really glad to pick this up. Not a real expensive one. I think this was $20, $25, and this is a early press from, I think it's like 59. It's got the ink after the Bill Grauer productions, but was excited to pick this up. Next one was one that I was really excited to pick up. I just found this in the stacks at Needle Drop in Rochester. This is Groove and Blue, Curtis Amy and Frank Butler. Again, just like I was talking about a little while ago with the Curtis Amy Mustang. Ever since the Katanga Tone Poet came out, I've been looking for the other Curtis Amy Pacific Jazz sessions, and was lucky enough to find this just sitting in the stacks for $15. I would say that it plays probably like low VG+. The music is very loud really throughout. I think there's only one track that's a ballad on it, so the music really covers up any of the surface noise, so you really don't hear much of any surface noise on it. So I'm really glad to have been able to grab this. It's original mono, the black Pacific Jazz label. This is another one that Chris Tree McGee had shown on Instagram. He recommended this to me, and pretty quickly I was actually able to find it, which was great. This is Donald Byrd, Fancy Free. This is from 1969. So later, a little bit later era Donald Byrd. He still was on Blue Note for a few years after this, but a little bit different of a sound than his other Blue Note albums. But a really great, a little bit more of a kind of post-bop sound to it. A little bit funkier at times, but was glad to be able to grab this. A great late era Donald Byrd album. This was one that I just kind of dug out of the basement at the Bop Shop. I went down there actually looking for this album that I was able to, the Fancy Free, and actually when I came back up Tom, the owner, put that right in my hands. But I found this. This is an original stereo copy of Freeform. After giving it kind of 2 cleans, it sounds incredible. Very little surface noise on it. Got a great price on it, especially because of the cover on the back, a little bit rougher. But the vinyl plays really great. Most part, this is a pretty standard Donald Byrd session. This was kind of an interesting one though as well, because it does have the catalog number 4118, but it didn't come out at the time, which was, I think it was recorded in like 61, so it would have come out probably 61, 62. It didn't come out until Liberty took over Blue Note in 66, and so there is no pressings with the Plastylate P or the ear and the dead wax, but sounds incredible. And very, very, like I said, pretty standard Donald Byrd session, except for the closing track, Freeform. That's got a much different sound to it than I've ever heard of Donald Byrd. That's probably as out there, kind of, I'd say almost really free as Donald Byrd is, at least for my listening. So, but a great one. Really was glad to pick this up. This is a tougher one to find, so was glad to be able to grab a nice copy of that. This is one that I recommend if you do see it in your stores. This is a more recent black jazz reissue by Real Gone Music. This is Kelvin Keys, called Shaunique. And this is originally was from 71. A really incredible black jazz recording. Very difficult to find original pressings. It's going to be expensive if you do find one. Would love to find an original of this, but this earlier this year reissue sounds great. So I'm really glad to have this. Again, if you see this in your store, local record store, make sure you pick this up. Great guitar-based jazz. It's got a lot of the black jazz stuff was more post-bop, modal, sometimes a little bit more out there, but this one is pretty straight ahead. So if you do like guitar-based jazz, this is a great one to kind of consider. Those are my finds from the last month. I believe there's 25, so was really glad to be able to grab all of those, and for the most part I've had a chance to listen to all of them, but for those that haven't, I'm excited to kind of check those out. I do hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please think about liking and subscribing. Please tell me in the comments what you liked, and I'll see you in the next vinyl video. Bye.